Cordially welcome to this webinar, CODESYS OPC UA. We want to show you in the next hour how you can benefit from this integrated technology inside CODESYS. So let's start with a short introduction. Of course, I think everybody knows about OPC and OPC UA. However, I think it's necessary to give a short introduction. The original problem is, how can we get the data of a PLC, of the field data, into a visualization? In the past, there were a lot of specific drivers necessary. And of course, we all know that with a standardized interface, OPC, object linking embedded for process control, so this was the original idea, this got a very nice and handy solution with different specifications for data access, alarm and events, historical data access, and some other specifications. The only problem was that this technology was based on Microsoft COM and DCOM, so on this OLE, object linking and embedding. Therefore, there was no use possible for other operating systems, and today this is no longer up to date. So we will need something different. And yeah, the advancement is OPC UA, UA for Unified Architecture. The first release was already in 2006, so already 15 years ago. And some specifics, this is a platform independent standard, so no need to rely on Windows anymore. Modern portable technologies, web technologies are used. We have dedicated portable communication stacks in all available programming languages, so not only in ANSI C, but as well in C#, in Python, and other languages. So the data is packed transparently. And there's a lean data exchange between server and client on a specific efficient protocol. In comparison to OPC, the configuration of the server is simplified, so there are less errors for users. And there's a functional upgrade to the controller because client can now as well have functional access to the application. The whole OPC UA technology got its breakthrough with Industry 4.0 with this initiative, which is now covering worldwide all the technological discussions. Some features, and just a short excerpt. We have two different data exchange formats, a binary, lean binary format, and as well a XML-based format for web services. There's an advanced application programmer interface independent from the protocol. We have a built-in security, secured communication with authentication and encryption of the signals of the data between the server and the client in different layers. There's a service-oriented architecture with a set of services such as query, read, write, subscribe. And there are neatly defined object models for data, events, methods. And there's even an application-specific information model available, or there are such models available. So this makes it easy to use this OPC UA standard in different areas and industries and have different specifications for data exchange there. This was the short introduction. Now let's go into technology. The first approach is, how can we realize the communication between a controller, a PLC, and a visualization? And there are, of course, two aspects, the one from the PLC and the one from the visualization. And we will cover both aspects in this webinar. Some prerequisites. We need an OPC UA server on the PLC. So down here. Of course, we're talking about CODESYS, so the easiest is to take a CODESYS-based PLC. Now, there are two different options in order to implement such an OPC UA server. In case you are a device manufacturer, you can purchase an option for the runtime toolkit. So during the runtime implementation, you can add the OPC UA server and make your PLC with an integrated OPC UA server. So your customers will have a PLC with integrated OPC UA server. In case you are a user of such devices, you can either use a controller from one of your suppliers that has already such an OPC UA server integrated, or, and this is another option, you choose for a soft PLC, which is available in the CODESYS store. As you see here, the icons for the soft PLCs, which you can find in the CODESYS store, and all of them have the OPC UA server included and licensed, so you can immediately use it. Today I will use such a soft PLC too for my live presentations, because it's just easier for me to build up the setting. In any case, and this is a real important requirement, the OPC UA server takes a certain performance, so you need to have a powerful PLC for realizing such an OPC UA server. Per default, the PLC Open Information Model is realized on the controller side. Now let's look at the OPC UA client. This has, of course, to be established at the visualization in here, and this is what we want to show you now in the live mode. For this purpose, I switch at first step my camera off, and I switch to my CODESYS development system, and I have just a simple standard project in here. This will be leading us through the whole webinar. It's a simple 2-point regulator as a refrigerator. I just connect to my soft PLC, which is already running. Connect it, and I'm working here with the latest version, Service Pack 17 of CODESYS version 3.5. And here the authentication on the controller is mandatory. Therefore, I already set an administrator password, and therefore I can log in as administrator and connect to this controller. Okay, how can I establish the publication of data to OPC UA? This is simple. It's the same way as we had it before with OPC. There is a certain object necessary in my device tree called symbol configuration. This symbol configuration is a kind of export. I need to have a compiled project for that. Therefore, I have a button built in here, and I pressed that. So you see that the application is compiled, is translated to binary code, and then I can select which variables I want to publish for the OPC UA usage. I will use just these local variables, or these global variables within that variable list in here. Okay, so this is the publication. Furthermore, I need to go to the settings and enable support OPC UA features. And this is everything that turns the PLC into an OPC UA server and receives these published data. By the way, there is another option which I won't show you right now. You can even have so-called symbol sets in order to have a fine detailed selection of which data you want to publish to which user. So you can have even a kind of user management for that data. Good, so this is everything on the server side. Now I can log in. Oh, I forgot one thing, because right now we can have as well a secure communication. You know that we can have a secure communication for the whole programming, but I want now to establish a secure communication only for the OPC UA server. For that purpose, I open the security screen. You find here this shield icon here, and double click on it, or the other way around would be view and security screen with the same shield icon here. Now this would be the look of that editor, and I go now to the devices and check which security possibilities are already available on the device, on the soft PLC. So I update my device here, click on the device, and I see, okay, there is already a certificate for the encrypted communication between the programming system and the PLC. But in this case, I want to have an OPC communication, OPC UA communication, which is encrypted. And therefore, I need, of course, a certificate. For that purpose, I create a certificate on the device. I can select the key length and the validity period, press OK, and then such a certificate is calculated and it's now available in here. And there's another option. I can decide whether I want to have authenticated access from the OPC UA server. And this is here in the communication policy of the device. And you see, there is a device user management, which is enforced. Therefore, I had to use the user management for logging in. However, I could unforce that and allow anonymous login, but I won't do that right now. Okay, just leave it that way. Okay, so I can log in to the controller, download, and start the application. Okay, in the meantime, I can prepare my OPC UA client. In this case, I want just to have a demo client. For that purpose, I have a special demo client installed on my computer, which is from a company called UR-Expert. So I start my soft PLC here, and this is already prepared, so it's already started. And here I can add just a new server. Now you see there are already registered server in here, but I want to access to the new server. Here we are. So you see, now we have here all the green ones, the secured ones, and I just take one of them, connect with my user login, my user credentials. Yeah, there's already, of course, I tested the connection before, therefore it was just overwritten. And now I can connect to this server. At first step, the UI expert tells me that this certificate is untrusted because it was not trusted by an official certificate authority. However, I can trust it myself because I've just generated it, can continue, and now I have the connection established. So here I can go to the device set, can find the CODESYS control win, which is the soft PLC I'm working with, the application, the global variables, and here I have this global variable list, which I have published. So I can now use all these variables in here, and you see that exactly what I told you is working. There is a simple project running with a temperature set value, which is 8 degrees, and there is a actual value, which is measured by a simulation in this case. And if it's above 8 + 1 degree, then there is a cooling compressor switched on. And if it's below 8 - 1 degree, then the cooling compressor is switched off. And by a simulation, that temperature is raised again. Okay, I can even force the raising of the temperature by opening the door of the refrigerator. So I can just click in here, and then it's faster. And by the way, of course, we can watch all the same variables in here, which are, of course, exactly the same if I'm logged in. Perhaps we put that in parallel so we can see all the variables here in parallel. Okay, cooling compressor is on again. We're cooling down here. So the same result as before. Good. Let's switch back to the presentation. Good. We have seen that. We have the PLC with the integrated OPC UA server. Use the simple configuration, publish the data that we want to publish, enables the support OPC UA feature, and then we can even have the access right definition in case we want to do that. And on the other side, on the OPC UA client, we just establish the connection. We read-write access to the data, and then we can see and work with the data. One more thing is possible, methods calls that I will show in a minute. I won't show right now recording of alarm and events, which is as well available as of Service Pack 17 of the CODESYS runtime system. As I said, currently is the PLC Open information model supported, but there are as well other possibilities to support simple information models thanks to an import of XML files. We'll see that too in a minute. We have seen that there is now a security aspect as well covered by authentication, and I can decide whether I want to have an anonymous or a personalized access, and I can use this encryption. So we have secure communication and a secure transfer of user information. Now, how can we use this information models? I switch back to my programming system, can log out, and now I have a new possibility, which is as well available just from Service Pack 17. I can go to the device tree and add an object called Communication Manager. So brand new, we just add it. And to this object, I can now add an OPC UA Information Model. Can give it a name and can select out of a list of installed XML files for such information models, the one I want to choose for. In this case, I take this one. This is just a demo information model. However, it works fine, and I can show that quite easily. So I add that, and then I receive this new node here with that information model. And if we take a look at it, then we see that there are different data models prepared. And for example, I will now work with this test root object type, which has several base types with nested or direct variables, even with methods and so on. And I can just take this root type and put it into my project, just drag and drop it to the right side, then it's available in here. So the same variables are now available. Now, how can I use them? In order to be able to use them, I need to instantiate them. And for instantiation, I need, of course, a certain data structure predefined. Of course, I could do that manually, but don't worry, CODESYS is helping you with this purpose. So there's a button, generate IEC declarations. Now we know our project in here, and if I press on that button here, then all these data types here are generated in a special folder, OPC UA symbol objects, with structures, with function blocks, which I can then instantiate and use. So there are different function blocks, some of them with FBs. I will just delete these two of them because I won't need them. Okay, now how can I use them? Next question. I can go back to this node, OPC UA symbols, and I can create directly in here a new instance for all these variable types that were created. So I choose the IC type test root object, which is the one I had integrated. And now I have my first instance here for these variables. Of course, these are now standard IC 61131 variables. I could instantiate them as well in a different way. I just go to, for example, my PLC PRG and instantiate them manually. And of course, I can use the input assistant once again. And if I go to structured types, you will see that in the application now, this OPC information models are available, and I take again this test root object type and instantiate it. Good. If I do manually, I can go back to that symbol list and search for manually mapped instances, and you will see, okay, there's my instance 2 now found, and both are available right now. Okay, if I log in again to the controller and download the application, then these new variables will be immediately available after login and after executing the application within the OPC UA client. So just wait until everything is compiled and downloaded. Okay, I switch back to the OPC UR expert. I can rebrowse the selected nodes. And now in the objects, I have now 2 nodes, instance 1, instance 2, and I can now, for example, add here my new variables, which are of course not established right now. There's just a 0 inside, but just to show you, this is updated, and I can immediately have these data from the information model within the OPC UA communication and work with them. And you see there's one more thing. There's an example method. If I right mouse click on that example method, I can call it. So I get a special editor, a special dialog from the client, and I can now have here some values inside and can call that. Brings an unexpected value back. This is quite simple to explain, because if we go back to the root project, then we see that in this example method, there is no code yet. So we just update the code. We're only live programming right now. And I log in with online change. So don't need to recompile the whole application, but just perform an online change, download the changed data. And of course, after an online change, the project is still executed. So we're immediately in run mode again. And if I go back and call this method once again, then we get the expected value. And just to show you, this would of course work with different input values. Okay, so we have seen how to use the information model within the CODESYS development system by adding the communication manager, adding OPC UA information model, and using that information model in order to bring the data inside the project by the button generate IC declarations, and then have these declarations and just instantiate them. Okay, this was the view between the communication of PLC and visualization from the PLC side. Now let's change the view. We're now changing from the PLC side to the visualization side, because you know that CODESYS as well offers a very convenient visualization software. What is necessary? We need, of course, any OPC UA server running on a PLC, which publishes data. And we need these definitions of the exported variables and their access rights, as we just did it with the CODESYS PLC. And we need, on the other hand, a visualization that is able to act as an OPC UA client. And the CODESYS HMI SL, thus the PC-based visualization, is now able to do so as of Service Pack 17. And I want to show you that again in a live mode. For that purpose, I switch to an empty project here. So just from the scratch, I start a new project. And instead of using a standard logic project, I take now an HMI project. Really from the scratch, I have already HMI client running on my PLC, on my computer here. This is this one down here. So I can search for it, find it here, connect to it, can create some projects with add-on tools. I don't need them right now. I choose for the HMI perspective, and I finish and let the wizard prepare the project for me. So at this position, I want to mention that there is a little bug inside the release of Service Pack 17 on the client side here. And I just want to show you the workaround for it. By the way, again, here we are having that user authentication as a mandatory thing. Okay, the little bug is that the visualizations are not called by the wizard. So there is a little and small workaround. Just add here a new visualization object. And delete it once again. This is all, just simple. I just want you to know that right now, so you don't lose any time for searching for the problem. Okay, now we have an empty new project, visualization project, and now we want to establish the connection between the HMI client and the OPC UA server. And for that purpose, we use data sources as we had perhaps done it before with another data source. So we can add an object here, a data source object, and instead of having CODESYS symbolic or application access, we can now have here as well an OPC UA server access. I add that, and here I really need to insert the server URL. In order to be a little bit faster, I have prepared the link already here in my notepad. So I just copy it in here, connect to the server, and in this case, it's a different server running on a different PC here. You see perhaps that there are a different PC here on my left. However, I have the same project running there in an older version. So this is running with CODESYS Control Win Service Pack 16, not 17. And I will include all the variables of this variable list here again. By the way, instead of opening step by step all these nodes, you can use your keyboard, not the integrated keyboard of the notebook PC, but an external keyboard, and the multiply key, and then it's immediately opened once again. I'll just show you that if I close that again here. Oops. And you see, this is just much faster as a little hint. Okay, now the connection is established. The data is imported. I can see that here, and again, here I can open that whole tree again. Perhaps I perform that hook here for always updating. Get different, could use different mappings. Just can check the communication. There is some general information in the diagnosis, so the update rate can be established in here. Yeah, and this is at first step everything I need to do for the connection to the server, so I can concentrate on my visualization. And for example, I can insert a little measurement for the refrigerator temperature. So I switch off my camera again, by the way, that you have a bigger window. So this is the actual temperature here. And perhaps we scale that a little bit more conveniently so we don't have such a huge range, with only a range between 4 and 12 degrees. Okay, then we add some lamps and switches. For example, we take a lamp for the cooling compressor, and a switch for door open. Oops, wrong one. So, and perhaps I even add a small trace object so I can trace these variables in the visualization task. And again, here I take the actual temperature and as well the setting value. Okay, I log in, download the visualization, and can of course immediately visualize the value on the OPC UA server, which is the soft PC on the other side. So let's see whether this works. Okay, you see that this is running in a full screen mode. This is the standard mode of the CODESYS HMI SL. And you see the temperature is rising again. We see here in the trace, which is at 8 degrees, the set temperature, and the blue one is the actual temperature. And this is now moving up and down by this 2-point regulation. So quite easy. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Switch on the camera again. So we have seen how we can use that using CODESYS HMI SL with the data sources, establish the OPC UA connection by the URL, browse the available variables, and use them in our visualization screen. So the conclusion is the communication between PLC and visualization is quite easy to implement. The only thing you need is a OPC UA server on a powerful controller, and ideally spoken, it's running on every powerful PLC. We can secure the communication via X5089 certificate. By the way, not yet for the CODESYS HMI SL, therefore I've used another PC for the communication, so this was the little hit here in the webinar. We can easily use application-specific information models. CODESYS HMI SL, this visualization client, is now independent of CODESYS controllers, so you can even work with other controllers right now. We are in contact with system partners to do so. You have now visualization with CODESYS as well in mixed environments, not only with CODESYS compatible controllers. Good. Now let's go to the next step. The server-client communication, not only between PLC and visualization, but as well between PLC and PLC. So the prerequisites are, of course, simple. Ideally spoken, there is an OPC UA server and a client pairwise on the PLC. Yeah, the server configuration is as usual with the CODESYS OPC UA server or with any arbitrary OPC UA server. On the client configuration, you could use any OPC UA client, or you can use now the CODESYS OPC UA client, which is available in 2 different ways. And I want to show you the 2 different ways in a live demonstration. So I will switch back to the CODESYS surface and open a new project here. Client, this one here. By the way, this is an example which is derived from the store client that you can find for free in the downloads of the CODESYS store. However, I want to show you how it is used and how we can use it. I don't want to go too deep into the details of how it is realized because it's a little bit complicated for those of you or of me who are not familiar with object-oriented programming. So we take a look at the device tree here and the POUs. Then we have, of course, the call of many functions coming out of that library, and they are somehow nested by certain inherited functions. But for this simple example, we just want to establish a very easy connection by means of a visualization. So you could do that as well without a visualization and just take the application in order to establish the communication. Same thing here. I connect to my soft PLC with the user authentication. So download the application in here, override the existing application, and now I can establish the communication. For that purpose, we have in the library manager, of course, these library functions, OPC UA client, OPC UA stack, and they are now called by these function blocks and within the visualization. And this looks a little bit similar to the UI expert, and in fact, it's nothing different. And I will just do the same thing. I add the same URL for the server, connect, connected. And then I can go to the left side and go to the different objects and browse them. So the device set, the soft PLC with its resources, with its application, with its global variables. And here I can now again take my set temperature, put it in the middle in here, and the actual value of that temperature. You see the same values are running in here. So by the way, if I switch back to my screen from before, we can do some changing. For example, I will change now the value of the set temperature from 8 degrees to 9 degrees, and we should see that immediately by this green line here. So I go to set value, insert here a new value 9, write the value, and then we should see that. Yeah, we have the jump in here. So the communication really works in both directions. Quite easy. However, the call is not that simple. Nevertheless, those of you who are familiar will easily realize such a communication out of the application. For those of you who are not, don't worry, because there's a different and much easier way, and it's just almost the same way as doing it with the CODESYS HMI SL with the visualization. We just take a new project here and we will work with the data sources. So again, I choose here for the soft PLC, establish the connection, need to establish the authentication, add there the data source object, and here I will find the OPC UA server. Okay, I can copy again my URL, and then I can browse my variables available. Okay, and here I use the multiply key to open all these variables here and import them, always update them. We'll have them all here right now. And now I can use them instead of the visualization immediately in my logic application. So for example, I go to the CFC object here and just choose a very simple move command with a trigger, X trigger, and take a new value, new set value, which should be of the type real. And let's take the initialization value of 8 again. And I will move this one now to an output. And as you can imagine, I will now just take an output from the OPC UA server. Now you see I get the data sources, device set, and so on. And I can take that set value. And perhaps I add some other values in here for the display, only for displaying. So for example, the actual value and the cooling compressor. So actual value and the cooling compressor, and perhaps door open. Okay, now I can log in. Overwrite the old application. Start this one here. Okay, and the connection is established. We see that in here. And now I can change this value again. And for this purpose, perhaps we open the visualization from before again. The set value is still on 8 degrees. As soon as I enable that X trigger value, this, now it's on 9 degrees, still on 9 degrees. And as soon as I enable this value here, this 8 degrees will again be written. And you see we have the jump down here. So as well, this is running, and we see here the actual value, we see the cooling compressor, the door open, and we can really work with it in the same way as they were local variables. They were just imported from OPC UA, from the server, and in this way I can easily have a communication between server and client. And of course, I could in the same project have as well a server configuration and therefore have a bidirectional communication between server and client. Good. Let's switch back to the presentation. We have seen this one here, and we can conclude that this way to exchange data is standardized. It's quite easy for controller to controller communication too. So the only thing is that we need high resources for the server. So for small devices, it's not ideal. Therefore, the usage is possible via the application and via this convenient client configurator. Yeah, this is not only a communication between PLCs, but as well between PLCs and other systems or between other systems. So there are many discussions about administration shells in order to exchange information between different devices, different machines, different units, different systems. Yeah, and even between such systems or controllers and public cloud systems, because nowadays they all support as well OPC UA as a communication feature. Now let's go to the last point, to the communication between arbitrary devices. So not necessarily high performance devices. Let's make a short recap. Within the CODESYS world, we don't need that because there's a special protocol called network variables, a proprietary communication protocol, which offers the possibility to exchange data between a sender and a receiver. So the sender can publish global variable lists and the receiver can either import them or just use them within the same project. Now, just to give you a short recapitulation of that, I have in here some screenshots. I don't want that to show that in a live mode. But what about a mixed control landscape? There, OPC UA offers a special communication way, which is called PubSub, publisher subscriber. And this is now possible between different devices on a standardized and lean protocol. So this is suitable not only for PLC to PLC communication, but as well for PLC to device communication, because it's not that demanding concerning the performance. The data exchange is realized via messages, at first step via the UDP protocol, but the whole protocol is prepared in a way that there can as well be deterministic data exchange. For example, via TSN, time-sensitive networking, or field-level communication, or OPC UA FX, which is the newest term for that. So this could mean that there is even real-time communication between the devices, and this means OPC UA PubSub can serve as a field bus system. Now, how is OPC UA PubSub implemented in CODESYS? Simply by a product which you can get from the CODESYS store. Now, this is the icon for it. It's called CODESYS OPC UA PubSub SL. So a single license product which you can use on almost any CODESYS compatible controller. The only thing is that you need an Ethernet port. The realization of that protocol was made in IEC 61131 languages, so it's platform independent. But there's one hard recommendation or hard prerequisite. You need a licensing option on the controller, either via a soft container or via a dongle with the licensing option on it, so a CODESYS key. The product is realized as a library with an object-oriented model. What we are still developing is a convenient configurator comparable with the network variables. Therefore, I showed you in brief the recapitulation of that network variables. At the moment, the communication is established via UDP broadcast by a cyclic call of the function blocks. There are additional diagnostic functions available. However, the whole library and the protocol is realized in a way that we can easily extend it by time-synchronized communication protocols, so the mentioned TSN, FLC, OPC UA FX protocols, as soon as there are released and available for everybody. I want to show you how to use that. And again, here, I don't want to realize that from the scratch, but I use here an example project which I have adapted to my setting here. So this example project consists of 2 devices with 2 applications. And I need, of course, to download them on the 2 different devices. So I have one device here, which will be my local PLC. And here I have the remote device, which will be the sender. And perhaps we start with the receiver. I set the active application to this device here, establish the connection once again, choose for my soft PLC, which is in this case the Service Pack 17 soft PLC. Perhaps I just check once again the IP addresses because they're important. So these are the IP addresses in here. I had to prepare them according to my network, of course. So this is correct. Then I can log in and download this application to my local PLC running on this computer here. Start it, and perhaps we take a short look at it. So there's a PLC PRG which calls something, and the something is the most important thing of this something is that communication PRG here, which we'll take a closer look in a minute. The first thing I just do right here is starting the communication. So the receiver is already listening right now. We see here we have the communication established. All these function blocks have a true. Okay, so we are ready for the communication on the sender side. Now we change to the on the receiver side. We change to the sender side, change the active application, connect that now to the other soft PLC running on my separate computer. By the way, I switched the camera off again. Download the application here. So we see we're working on an older version, so it's not necessarily working with the latest version. OPC UA PubSub is something that is, I think, possible to use since Service Pack 14. Execute the application and go here to my PLC PRG, and yeah, it looks almost the same way as this other tree here. It's just almost the same thing. So therefore I have to start the application 2. And we see again here, we have the complete set of function blocks executed and active with the true. And then we can check whether the communication is working, whether we have that data exchange. So I can go to the global send data and open them. And I go to the received data. No, so here, this one, this proxy, and move that one to the right so that we can compare all the values that we want to exchange. Okay, so I change the value in here, write it, and you see it's written here. Can do that with the string variable in here. So for example, just a short greeting, hi there, and it's easily transmitted. So communication works quite nice. Let's take a closer look to the communication once again. I'll log out for this purpose, and I'll log out both of them. Yeah, the sequence of function is quite similar in both directions. Now we have the configuration and the connection, and all these function blocks are called from the OPC UA library, which is in the POU tree. It's in here. So the only thing we need is then to configure it, establish the connection, and to have a certain writer group with a writer, and then the data we want to transmit. And you see these are of course different. We have a writer group on the left side and a reader group on the right side. And TX sensor dataset and RX sensor dataset are different, of course. But if we take a closer look to both of them, then we see that those extend, so an object-oriented model, a sensor dataset, a standard, let's say, function block, which is within the POU tree, and which does not distinguish between sensor, between receiver and sender. So it's the same function block on both sides. So as well here for the receiver dataset, it's the same function block. And so this is the big issue of this PubSub communication, that we have now the same communication data for both sides, and we don't need to care about which data structure is behind it. Quite handy thing, but again, this will be improved with a configurator soon. So we've seen that, and I can conclude that PubSub communication is available as a product, so you can start from the scratch right now. It's a lean stack with a lean protocol. You can use the data exchange via application right now. So also on smaller controllers, even for communication with sensors and actuators. This can be used as a field bus. As I said, at the moment, still a little bit more complicated to use for those of you who are not familiar with object-oriented programming. However, there are not that many compatible devices available right now, but this will change soon. So now I'm at the end of the webinar. However, I want to give you a short conclusion. OPC UA is an important communication protocol. It's used in wide areas of industrial automation, and there can easily be a communication between, let's say, factory automation and building automation, energy automation, because they're all using the same standard. It's not only for the communication between PLCs and visualization, but as well between PLCs and field devices. For powerful devices, the server client is the right choice of the protocol. For less performant devices, also field bus devices, PubSub is the right choice. Everything is seamlessly integrated in CODESYS, and we are working on the improvements and enhancements, and you can expect a lot from us in the future. However, benefit right now and start using it. Thank you very much for your attention. As we said and promised, we will answer the remaining questions via email. Thank you for joining.